to vowel plus E, then you teach the vowel plus E syllable. And when you teach Bossier, then you teach R controlled syllables. And when you teach the position of AUAW and OUAOW and OIOY, then you do the vowel T syllables. So it's kind of going back and forth that way, introducing the ideas with the lessons that are ostensibly for the single syllable level, but then applying it to multi-syllable words and syllable types. And I think that, I know actually, because I've done it with kids, that it works really nicely doing it that way. Okay? And then what I also said, and I hadn't thought of this until Kelsey asked me this question, is, okay, so now I've taught the syllable types, then where do I go? And that's essentially where we are in our lessons right now. Then you do the Anglo-Saxon morphology, and then you do the Latin morphology. And then if you're 4th, 5th, 6th, you do the Greek morphology. Okay?
About guided reading, and my question to guided reading is, what does that mean? Do we know who did that, who shared, what is everybody doing about guided reading?
That was me again.
That girl's getting ready for her class. Okay, so Kelsey, what do you mean by guided reading?
So by guided reading is, to me, well, it's where you have a group of students that are, I'm gonna get into. So my background is Fountain and Pinnell. So I'm just gonna throw that out there right there. But to me, you're getting into a small group, and you're targeting those skills that those students need, and you're working with them on the reading, which encompasses that the fluency, the comprehension, all of that part of reading.
So let me see, because and everybody, I'm not the only one, okay? The definition of guided reading is how do we define that? Is that we're teaching kids explicitly and systematically, they're breaking the code as well as making meaning, or are we using guided reading as the vehicle to teach making meaning? That's the question.
I did. Can you say that again?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is guided reading your vehicle for teaching or practicing? Is it the teaching of breaking the code, in other words, reading and spelling individual words, or is it the vehicle to teach comprehension and vocabulary? That's my question.
So to me, it's practice. So you'll teach a whole group, and then you'll go to that small group, and you're reinforcing those skills. So you're doing the meaning, but you're also doing the spelling and the code and breaking the code as well.
Okay. So I think that what you've done is you've gone outside of the classic definition of guided reading, or maybe it's the real meaning of guided reading. What does anybody else think? Deb, what do you think?
I think.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I think that's how we were taught when we were in school doing the guided reading. You pull usually a group of, I think, 3, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelsey, 3 or 4 kids together within a group.
Mm-hmm.
And then while they're together, the other kids are usually in activity centers. And it's quite short. It's only about 14 or 15 minutes per class.
Mm-hmm.
And how one of my associate teachers used to do it is she had a group of 20 kids, so she'd make sure that she always saw 4 kids a day. And there'd be a focus lesson. So at the beginning of the week, she'd organize it. So Monday to Friday. And this week they might all work on, for example, I'm just giving an example off the top of my head, like making connections.
Okay.
And you would cater your lesson for each of the groups. I actually went to grab a book I think it might be helpful. It's called Strategies at Work. Kelsey, this is a really, really good book. When I used to do my guided reading lessons, I used to basically take everything from this book here
Okay.
and then arrange the lessons from there. It'd be short mini lessons where you might be able to like read a little text together as a group. And at that time we were using DRA. And then from that text, you do your mini lessons. So it might be like, okay, can you find a text-to-text connection? And then they would all get sticky notes and they would write down, okay, what text-to-text connection they would find. And then they would share it within that little group. So it's more individualized study.
Is that Ellen Keene's book?
No, this is Stephanie Harvey and Anne Goodfeast. I'll write it in the chat.
Great, great.
It's
Okay.
called
And
Strategies
they
at
are
Work.
really good authors as far as comprehension. They're really good comprehension authors.
Yeah,
Thank you.
they're one of my favorites. So.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is does anybody else have input on this?
Can I add something?
Deb, did you have something?
I can add too.
Irene was just saying she had something, but yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not being able to see you guys today.
Okay. I think the guided reading, like the traditional guided reading, was more with the 3 cueing systems.
Okay.
But if you do the David Kilpatrick book, he gives you lessons. Now, mind you, I'm teaching lower grades, but it gives you a lesson plan where you can you're more structured literacy.
Okay. And actually, one of the things I've been thinking about today is maybe if we get enough done, the last day, what we really do is lesson planning. You know, how do we put this into action kind of thing? So that's my vote on this.
Mine too.
Joanne, you had something?
With the guided reading and all, I go with more with what Kilpatrick is saying. What you're saying is more of, when I do the guided reading, I want them in their decodable books so that it's a continued practice. What the strategy, I have that book, with the book I use rather than I use strategy sometimes, is Debbie Miller's Reading for Meaning. And that I use as a whole group. And that's where I bring in connections and synthesizing and questioning and visualizing.
Great.
So I'm reading a higher level mentor text.
I see.
And then that's what, so my guided reading really comes down into the decodable until I know that they've got it. They've got their decoding down.
And to me, that is something that I would absolutely do, which is the other reason that we have to, in my mind, we have to know where all of our kids are before we can decide how do we organize what we're doing in class. Because one size doesn't fit all, and you're going to have a range within one class that is enormous. I mean, you can have everything from non-readers to kids who are way above grade level. And if you don't know that, then how do you organize your class?
So that goes to my next question. So I know in the book you've talk about this, but the Kilpatrick, he has an assessment, what you can do to see on where they are. I ordered the book, but it's taking a while to get in. So from what everybody says, he has an assessment on what to do, right? With how to assess. But what about like the comprehension? I know the DRA and stuff like that.
Okay, Kilpatrick is only phonemic awareness. Only phonemic awareness. And then one of the things that I'm hoping to do with as many of you as possible is to do spelling. And actually, when you look at a spelling test, if you have a child who has phonemic awareness problems, you are going to see very specific kinds of errors. And that is outlined in my book. So by testing your kids we can look at the error pattern together and say, oh, these are the kids that I'm worried about. They don't have good phonemic awareness. And these are the kids that I'm worried about, that they don't have the orthographic patterns. And these are the kids I'm worried about. They don't know their syllable types, and et cetera, et cetera. That's what a spelling test can tell you, or a reading of individual words can tell you. Kelsey, are you in a public school?
Yes.
So I would ask, and I don't know how much we're going to get at this time, if you have a special ed teacher or a resource specialist or a school psychologist, if they have tests like the CTOP, Comprehensive Test of Phonological Processing. And so those kids that you're concerned about, you might be able to get them to do a phonemic awareness, a phonological processing test on.
Okay.
Comprehend-
Yes. Because I looked it up and that was quite expensive.
Yeah. Yes, but they should have it at your school level, okay, or the district level. And so ask for that. And then also you need a reading comprehension test, which is totally different. And there's many of those. Deb, I'm thinking Deb and Joanne and Lori or Laura, we might compile a list of possible, teacher-made tests that we could use to help people kind of get a sense of what's happening in their classroom this fall.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. And I just, I think that's one of the key things is finding basically screeners that you can use that are quick and but give you really good information. And so that's why I like the spelling test that you're talking about, maybe a list of words that you can read as well. And the thing about the CTOP, that's great if you really know that you really see concerns with phonemic awareness. The CTOP can be done, but I think they would be really hesitant to do it because it is expensive. You're right, the test itself is expensive and you would probably have to have one of the more specialized people in the school to give it. And it takes a while to give. Yeah. It's not just like this real easy thing to do that you can give to several students at one time or anything like that. So they would only do it if you really had valid concerns, I think, about a student. So you just need something that's more universal, I think, that you can do for all of your students to see where they're at.
Okay, and I will also ask my friend Lynn Kuhn, who's been in the public domain forever and ever, to see what I can get. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
did Kelsey say, are you using F&P, Fontes and Pinnell?
Not currently. My last district I did. My current district is HMH right now.
Okay, because I know there's lots of discussion right now on the internet about how because we have to use F&P, but that's 3 queuing systems. So there's lots of discussion how we can give those tests, but in a more science of reading kind of a way. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, Irene. So Irene, can you tap me into that? Because I'd love to see that discussion.
Yep.
I would
I'm taking the Kentucky group right now, and it's all based on from that website.
And I don't know what the Kentucky group is.
It's David Kilpatrick's book. They're just going through his book. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting stuff, guys. There's just so much happening simultaneously. And there's so many more resources than we've ever had. It's really wonderful.
Sasha, do you want us to send you some screeners that we use that have been effective, and then you could kind of go through them and decide what to share with the group, or how would you like?
So nice.
Okay, great. I can do that.
So nice. Thank you so much. We all have our areas of expertise, and if we can rely on each other and gather stuff this way, it's really helpful. It's really helpful. Okay, so shall we get going and finish up the Anglo-Saxon layer? So this is kind of my intro to doing we have several different more patterns at the Anglo-Saxon level that we really want to talk about. So I always like to say, what is it that we've learned already? And now how can we take some of those concepts and bring it forward to what we're doing in this new lesson? So one of the, this is what I wrote to do that for the next lesson, that we've learned the spelling of roots and suffixes are closely related, and that sounds of the past tense and the plurals are tied to the last sound, because it could be either a consonant or a vowel. And in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the interaction between a root word, a base word, and different suffixes. In this lesson, we're going to be adding suffixes that either begin with a vowel or a consonant. And when we add the suffix to a root word that has an E, a vowel plus E, sometimes we drop the E and sometimes we don't. So there's part of me that says when I'm working with students, one of the things that I do is I just put this out, and you are kind of like at the level that my students who have been working a long time are. So I say, okay, here are these words. And yeah, I can ask you questions and we can go over this word by word, but can you look at these words and can you ask yourself some questions and then come up with a hypothesis of what's happening when we have a base word that ends in an E. So can everybody look at that? And when you have a sense of what's happening here, put your thumb up, okay? So is anybody willing to tell me one thing that they think, just one idea that they think is happening here?
When the suffix starts with a vowel and there's an E at the end, the E is removed and the suffix is added?
I agree with that. That's one thing. Who can tell me another idea about this?
Well, if the suffix begins with a consonant, the E stays in place.
Right,
The root word.
because you know that E needs to be there to make
Block.
the vowel in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do that, okay? Anybody got anything else here? What I'm going to tell you is that's the rule. When you have a base word that ends in an E and you want to add a suffix, you have to say these questions to yourself. Is the last letter of the base word an E or any other letter? And what type of letter does the suffix begin with, a consonant or vowel? And if the base word ends with an E and the suffix begins with a vowel letter, you drop the E off the base word and add the suffix. And if the base word ends with an E, not and E, and the suffix begins with a consonant, you don't take the E off. That's the drop the E rule. Pretty easy, eh? Aren't you impressed with yourselves? Okay, now, I don't know. I kind of want feedback from you. I wanted you guys to do this yourself, but instead of going into groups, maybe each person take 2 or 3 of the words and add the suffixes, and then we'll report out. Just take 2, okay? So just take 2 of these words and do the addition of the base word to the suffix, and then we'll report out. Give me one of your words.
Sizable.
Okay.
And I removed the E.
Okay. And why did you do that?
Because it's the suffix starts with a vowel.
Exactly. I'm modeling what I want you to say to your kids, by the way. Who can do another word?
I can do one.
Okay, Laura.
Changing.
Okay. What are you going to do?
Drop the E.
And why?
Because the suffix starts with a vowel.
I agree. Lisa, pick one, please.
Let's see. How about careful?
Okay. And are you going to drop the E there?
No, we're going to leave it.
And why?
Because I'm taking a guess here. Because the suffix doesn't start with a vowel?
That's correct. It starts with a consonant. Absolutely. Okay, Kelsey and Son, do one for us.
He ran away. Smiling,
Okay, and what did you do?
drop the E
Okay,
because the suffix begins with the vowel.
okay. Does anybody have a question about this, or can we go on? Okay, let's go on. Okay, so the only note of caution that I want to put out there is on words which do end in an E, and the suffix does have a vowel at the beginning of it, but we need the E to say, make the G say J and the C say S. So we need the E on those words, and that's a logical thing, isn't it? Okay.
So Sasha, you might want to change this slide because
Okay.
peaceful already has an F for the suffix. But if you had like peaceable or something, so you'd already be keeping the E for
You are
like
right.
peaceful. So
You are right. Thank you. So now we have the Y rule. I'm going to do this the same way. There's a relationship between the base word and the suffixes. Can you look at these and say, what's the relationship? And I'm going to add one piece of information. This part of the Y rule, we are looking at the Y when it's acting as a single sound and a single letter. And the letter that's coming before the Y in these words is a consonant, not a vowel. That's a critical element here. So can you look at these words and see if you can figure out, when do I change the Y to an I and add a suffix? And when do I not change the Y to an I and add a suffix? And when you know that, just put your thumb up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Elizabeth to do this with me and see if you agree, okay? So let's look at the word carry. In the word carry, what kind of letter comes right before the Y? A consonant or a vowel?
A consonant.
I agree. And now we're going to add a suffix, ing.
Okay.
No, let's go to carries. We're going to add the suffix es. Okay. Es, does it begin with a consonant or a vowel?
A vowel.
And when we added the es to carry, what did we do with the Y? Did we keep it or did we change it to an I?
You changed it to an I.
I agree with you. Now let's look at the suffix ed. Does that suffix begin with a vowel?
Yes.
And when we added the ed, did we change the Y to the I, to an I?
Yes, you did.
We did. Now let's look at the suffix ing. Does that suffix begin with a vowel?
It does.
And did we change the Y to I and
No.
add the I? Why do you think we didn't change it?
From what I can remember, I think the suffix, because in carried, for it to make the E sound,
Okay.
was you needed like something before it, like the suffix. Is that right?
So here's the thing. There is a relationship between the two, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So, but if everything else that we've done, when the suffix begins with a vowel, we changed the Y to an I, right?
Right.
Right? And
Mhm.
now we have ing and it begins with a vowel. What if I change the Y to an I? It would say carriing. Does that seem wonky to you?
It would, yes.
It does. Because I don't think in my whole life I've ever seen a word that has I, right? So in this, do you agree? So in
Yeah,
this,
I agree.
in this rule, when we have a base word where there's a Y with a consonant before it, and we're adding a suffix, if we change the Y to an I, except if the suffix begins with an I, because we can't have two I's in a row. Okay.
Got it.
Now, I'm thinking of in my mind of the word merriment. And we could substitute merry there, right? Like being joyful, right? In the suffix merriment, it's M-E-R-R-Y. So it fits the part of the rule where we have a vowel at the end of it, a vowel at the end of the word and a consonant before it. The suffix ment, does it have a consonant or does it have a vowel?
Are you still asking me, Sasha?
Yes, I am. Thank you. So,
oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Merriment.
Uh-huh.
Okay, could you ask it? I'm so sorry. I was
okay.
writing
It's
some.
okay.
I was
It's okay.
writing the double I.
So the suffix ment, does it begin with a consonant or vowel?
Consonant.
Okay. And so when we stick the consonant ment onto Mary, we change the Y to I. So what I'm trying to get at here is any suffix that we stick onto a word that has a consonant Y, we change the Y to I unless
it's an I.
Unless the suffix begins with an I. Did that confuse everybody or did that seem clear? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. So I'm going to say it one more time. When you have a base word, this is a good way of showing it, that has a consonant with a Y, and you're adding any suffix, whether it begins with a consonant or a vowel, the Y changes to I and you add the suffix. However, the one exception to that is when you're adding a suffix that begins with an I, you do not change the Y to I. Okay? Any questions about that? Any confusions? I kind of did that this way, didn't I, guys?
There's only 2 words that I know of, and this isn't my idea, but I wrote it in the chat that the only time we have 2 I's next to each other is when we're skiing in Hawaii, but those are not English words. So we borrow them. So in English, we don't do that. Yeah.
And it's so funny. Sometimes, Deb, your mind and my mind, go the same place. And my mind said, oh, what about skiing? But it's a Scandinavian word. And I didn't remember Hawaii, but it's a Hawaiian word with as many vowels and open syllables as you could absolutely imagine.
Funny, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. These are the linguistic minds, eh? Okay, now we're going to go to the second part of the Y rule. And one of the reasons that I break these rules apart this way is I have found with my students that I have to be very, very aware of my chunk size. I have to be aware of, I don't want to put too much in one lesson. I need to really be careful not to mix kids up. And here I go giving you guys all of these rules one after another, right? Which doesn't seem totally fair. So I think what I want to do with this is I would like, Sarah, for us to break out into groups, and I'd like you to practice this before we go on to the next thing, because it's really great for me to say this, but until you can do it, I don't think I've done my job properly as a teacher. Okay.
I think we should make up words like ugly mint and jumpy full.
I just did ugly mint too. That was exactly
yes, there are some real words and some nonsense words, but that's the fun of it.
Yes.
So you also know, as you're going into groups, I'm trying to model for you exactly what I would do with kids in my classroom. Everything that I'm doing to you, I want you to do with your kids this year. Okay?
So we actually came up with an exception in our group.
Oh, what was it?
Shyly.
And what was the exception?
Well, when you spell shyly, you don't change the Y to I when you add Lee.
Is that a word? That's what and then we went to shyest.
I know. So there's lots of non-words in here, aren't there?
Is shyly not a word? He
I'm
sat
not
there.
sure.
Yes, it's a word. I looked it up. It is a word, but it
Okay.
doesn't drop the Y to make an I. It keeps it a Y.
That's
It
interesting.
does.
So my question is, because I hadn't been aware of that, why? Right? That's the question. And so my answer always is I would go to Edum online and try and figure it out. Does anybody have an explanation? I don't.
I don't understand why it wouldn't. Actually, I'm confused. Sorry.
So they're saying shyly.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And we drop the Y to I. So I would look it up and I tried to figure it out that way.
We also were stuck on Babely and Babyful, and I would have left it as a Y, and I think Lee said she would change it to an I, but we didn't know.
Okay, so let's go back. So we're talking about Babely, right?
Yeah.
So we have a consonant and a Y, and we're adding a suffix that begins that and we're adding a suffix that's either with a vowel or a consonant, and so we should change the Y to I. Is that what you did?
She did. But I said no. I think we should leave it as a Y, so I'm wrong.
Okay. And then shyly should really go along with the rule, but we're saying that we don't change it to the Y to the I for shyly. Is that correct? Is that what you guys are saying?
That looks pretty weird. That looks like silly. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that one, and I will have to investigate that. But I have to tell you, this is exactly what you should do in your class with your kids. You should say, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Let's look for some resources here. Okay? Because I am not going to know all of the possible answers. Right? But I can find it out. So now what I want to do is I want to go on to the second part of this Y rule. And this is a little different because when you have a vowel in front of the Y, the vowel and the Y are part of a diphthong or a digraph. And when the Y is part of a diphthong or a digraph like O-Y, A-Y, E-Y, we do not change the Y to an I. We just stick on the different suffixes. And you can see that here. You can see that in the word toy, and I'm adding ing, that the ing is a suffix that begins with a vowel. I don't change anything. But if I put an S on there, I still don't change it. So when you have a vowel in front of the Y, you don't change the Y. So instead of going into groups, let's have each of you pick one word and add these suffixes and see what you come up with, just to practice it a minute. So just take one word and add the suffixes.
What, if you would explain the why it doesn't change again?
Because when you have these words, we have A-Y, E-Y, U-Y, O-Y. The Y is an integral part of the vowel sound. It's not I think of it, although these terms are not completely accurate, I think of it as a single vowel as opposed to a digraph or a diphthong, okay? So when the Y is acting as a single vowel by itself, then it changes. But when it's part of a digraph or a diphthong, it doesn't change. Does that make sense now? Okay. You can tell as a teacher, I go by what faces look like. It really tells me all the time Uh-oh, Sasha, you didn't get that clear. Okay, so Heather Mason, are you willing to take one of these words and talk with me about it?
Yes, but I really have no idea. So I'll go with it though.
Okie dokie. So,
I was looking at the word volley.
Volley. Okay, so let me ask you the questions and maybe I'll be able to clear it up for you. Okay, good. So in the word volley, what is the vowel in the second syllable?
The EY.
EY. Is that like a single vowel or is it a digraph?
Digraph.
Okay. So when you have a digraph, that Y and that E are part of a team.
Okay.
And you can't break them apart. You can't change EY to EI. Because there's a vowel before the Y, EY is a team.
Okay.
And when I add a suffix, whether it is a consonant at the beginning of the suffix or a vowel, I just add it to the word volley.
So basically any of those suffixes just add on as are.
You
like
got
there's
it.
never any changing the E, like getting rid of both of them and putting in an I or any of that sort of thing.
You've got it. You've got it. And the reason why it's happening is that EY is a vowel together and I cannot break them apart.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, does it make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Do you see, if we don't do this, we're not clear as far as I'm concerned. And that's one of the things that I hated about going to UCLA, where there were 100 people in the audience, you know, right, in lectures. And if you didn't understand, tough tulips, right? Okay. So one more person. So pick a word and tell me about it.
We could choose toy.
Okay, toy.
And because OY is a, oh gosh, I forget now what it's called. You have to move your mouth, a diphthong, right?
A diphthong. Yeah.
Okay, so then because that Y is part of the O and the Y are a diphthong, we can't change them. So you would just add whatever you want, LY, ER, whatever.
Yeah. Can I add a suffix that begins with a vowel and just stick it on there?
Yep.
Can I add a suffix that begins with a consonant and just stick it on there?
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody clear now? Okay.
I have a question, Sasha. What would you do if, like, I just took the word display, if you have like ES and S?
Okay, that's a really good question. So if you think back to plurals, okay, when the difference between using ES and S was what's at the end of the base word, okay? And if you have the ending of the base word being an S,
an X,
Z, or a CH, or a GE or DGE, then you use ES. And if you have anything else, you just stick an S on there. Okay? Okay, good review. Good review. Any other comments or questions? This is complex stuff. And so when you're doing it with your kids, I mean, I gave you lots of suffixes, didn't I? I might not give my students so many suffixes to add on. I might just do 3 or 4. I might just pick, and I would want my students to be able to tell me, and what is the meaning of this suffix? And how does it change the base word? I mean, I can milk this lesson for so much, but that's the important stuff that you want to be talking about with your students on this level. You do not want to rush through this level of morphology, just like you don't want to rush through any other thing that we've learned in the 7 weeks that we've been here. If your kids can't explain it back to you, they have not got it. They might be able to fill in the blanks, but if they can't explain it to me, it doesn't work. I have one girl who right now, I'm just having so much fun with her. I worked with her when she was in 3rd grade, and now she's entering 10th grade. And mostly we're doing writing and comprehension, but we get to also do this multi-syllable stuff. When she was in 3rd grade, I didn't get to do all of this stuff. So she can rush through a paper and do it independently. But if she can't explain it to me, I make her go back. Okay? And she does it. I'm lucky. Okay. We've done a lot of things with the ends of an Anglo-Saxon word. Now we're going to talk about the prefixes for Anglo-Saxon words. And I think that Anglo-Saxon words are just so interesting because they are very, very, very common words. And a lot of times we use the words, but we don't really understand what the different morphemes in these words mean. For instance, if we have the prefix a, and Anglo-Saxon words like to take little words and a lot of prefixes and stick them on to a base word. So a lot of times they just took the letter A and they said abroad, afoot, along, aside. Okay. Kelsey, did you kind of get lost again? Okay. Aside, await, ahead, apart. I mean, these are words that we use all the time, right? But the letter A has a meaning. It means on or in. So afoot means on foot. And aside means on the other side. And ahead means in front of. Isn't this cool? Isn't this cool? I mean, just the little things like A stuck on a word. What does that mean? Then we have B, and it means completely or thoroughly. So if we befriend someone, we completely and thoroughly are their friend. And if someone is beloved, we completely and thoroughly love them. And if they're what, Irene?
If we're, I just.
Oh, now you're unmuted. You're muted again. I can't hear you. You're muted again.
So I looked at the word befuddle and I was thinking, I'm a little befuddled.
Okay.
With all this.
Okay. So is there something that you can say that I can help you with?
No, I mean, just all of this that we've been doing lately.
Okay.
It has befuddled me a little. Yeah.
Okay. It is the place where so few teachers go, right?
Yeah. And I don't often have to teach much of this. So.
But I'm going to tell you that we should, in 1st grade and 2nd grade, we should be doing Anglo-Saxon prefixes and suffixes, okay?
I would do prefixes and suffixes, but then I might just go as far as teaching them what that prefix or suffix means, but not whether we should, change the Y to I. I think I get to that by the end of grade 2. Yeah.
I think Y to I would agree with you. I would agree with you. But the doubling rule and the past tense and the plurals, absolutely, they have that in the books that they're reading, right?
Yep.
So we need to do that. And as far as I'm concerned, this stuff with Anglo-Saxon prefixes, we're getting into juicy words. We're getting into juicy words with our kids. And the vocabulary that we can do with this is just absolutely, hi Jackie, is just absolutely interesting and depth. And that's what I want us to do. And I love the Anglo-Saxon words. Somebody put, I think in our chat, all of those bamboozle and befuddle and all of those great juicy Anglo-Saxon words. And we can just build our kids' vocabulary so lovely with this. Okay, fore means before. So forearm is the part of your arm before, your bicep. And foreman is the man who is in front of and working with and in charge of all of the people. And foreshadow means that we're telling about what's going to happen before it happens. And miss means badly. Okay, I'm not going to belabor all of the words on this little slide. However, I'm going to show you things that I think would be really useful and that I do with my kids with this. So I could take one word and I could say, well, I'm going to put prefixes on it, and how does it change the meaning? Okay, so take one base word and just maybe 3 or 4, you don't have to do 5 or 6, prefixes, and say, okay, if I stuck these 2 morphemes together, what would the word mean? And we're really lucky that I chose repay, underpay, overpay, and prepay, because all of those are words, real words, aren't they? So what is the meaning? And so I could have a discussion with my kids about what happens when I stick these morphemes onto a base word. And kids really like this. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm doing all of this stuff with Sarah, and she really, for her age, her vocabulary is not strong because she has not read widely. And reading widely is what gets our kids to have good vocabularies, not just the language that we use with them. And so she is doing word study, and I count this as word study, and she is getting so interested in it, and she remembers it when we massage it this much. Okay? Okay, let's look at the next slide. So, I want to talk about Anglo-Saxon suffixes in yet another way. So I want to say, what is the function as far as noun, verb, adjective, adverb of these suffixes? And when I stick a suffix onto a base word, does the base word still stay a verb or a noun? Or does it change from a noun to a verb to an adjective or adverb? So when I have a base word and I stick suffixes on it, and it still stays a noun, like in, when I put an S on a noun, it's still plural noun, isn't it? And if I have a verb and I stick ED, most but not all the time, it changes a verb from present tense to past tense. But if I change a base word, like the word bear or allow, and those are verbs, I put able onto it, it changes a verb into an adjective, right? So we have fancy words to describe this. When you have a base word and you add a suffix to it, and that base word stays the same part of speech, that is an inflectional suffix. So if I have a base word and I put a past tense on it, it's still a verb, so ed is an inflectional suffix. If I have a base word and it's a noun and I stick an S on it, it's still a noun, so the plural is an inflectional suffix. But if I take a base word and it is an adjective, and I put the base like ness onto it, it takes that adjective and changes it into a noun. So if I have alert, that's an adjective. He is an alert person, right? But if I say alertness, now it's a noun. It's an abstract idea, alertness. Or if I have furious, that's an adjective. And I've put ness onto it, it becomes a noun. So the difference between the definition of an inflectional suffix and a derivational suffix is, does the base word change its part of speech or not? This is kind of a very abstract idea, isn't it? But this may help you. Inflectional suffixes change number, in other words, plural and singular. That's what inflectional suffixes change. They change plural and singular. They change time, which is it past, present, or continuing action? And they change person, because if I say stops, he stops, the S on stops tells me that it is the second person. So an inflectional suffix, the base words stays in its part of speech, but it changes slightly. A derivational suffix, when you add that suffix to a base word, that base word changes its part of speech. I think it took me about 20 times to hear this before I got this. Okay? But you're going to have these words thrown at you all the time, right? So let's look at what I have on the next slide. Maybe we can practice this a little. So we have the word act. And if I put an S on it, it changes from a singular noun to a plural noun. Is that inflectional or derivational? If it's inflectional, put one finger up. If it's derivational, put two. I see one finger from everybody. Thank you. If I say act, and I put an OR onto it, actor, is it an inflectional or is it a derivational? One is inflectional, two is derivational. So my question is, act, what kind of part of speech is act? Is it a noun or a verb? It could be either. I'm going to call it a verb. And then if I actor, is that a noun or a verb? It's a noun. So that was a tricky one, wasn't it, guys? How about acted? Is ed an inflectional or a derivational suffix? One is inflectional, two is derivational. Number one. Act and acted are both verbs. What we changed was the time. Okay. And finally, action. Act, I'm going to call a verb, and we're putting the ION on it. And so that verb changes to a noun. So is that inflectional or derivational? Okay. It is derivational. So here's one of the things that I say to my kids all the time. So everybody in the universe needs different exposures to an idea, numbers of exposures. Some of our kids, you can give them 4 exposures. Some of the kids, you can give them 10 exposures. Some of the kids, you can give 400 exposures, and that's what they need. So what you have to do is, as a learner of this stuff, because this is pretty new stuff for most people, right? So my question is, how many times do you personally need to practice this? And you have to make that decision, not me. So here's the thing. If you need more practice at this, you're going to write it, you're going to write me an email, and I will send you some practice sheets to do this with, okay? Because this is very complex. And I want you to get it. That's my responsibility. That's not yours, okay?
May I ask a question, Sasha?
Please.
So I understand this, and I'm wondering how this helps you teach students. I'm wondering what's the why behind them understanding it. And I'm not actually challenging you. I just am really curious how this helps you.
Okay, that's a great question. And thank you for being so conscious of, of me as an educator and being such a good communicator. So one of the things is that whenever I am working with a student, I have in my mind a picture of what literacy is about. And for me, literacy is about the confluence of all the different skills that can make me or my students a conscious learner rather than an unconscious learner. And one of the things that's true is all of these things in morphology are kind of a in between. How do I spell this word? And what does it mean? So if I'm talking with my kids about how do I spell these words and what does it mean, I have to say all of the stuff that we're doing. I have to say what's the meaning of the suffix, as well as how do I spell it? And how do I use it in a sentence? And how do I understand it when I'm reading and doing comprehension? So that's, to me, how this all meshes together. Does that answer you, Deb?
It does. I just try to figure out, as I'm doing tutoring mostly. I do have my grammar and writing classes, but for tutoring, just trying to figure out what is the most important thing, like to get them reading and spelling. So just trying to figure out, what do I give them? I could give them a lot of things. So just trying to figure out, like, if I know why it helps, how it's going to help them, then it'll help me to say, like, yes, I will definitely do this.
Because when we talk to them, we have to say, this is why we're doing this, right? Because they're not going to buy in unless they know a reason also. And so what the research says about teaching morphology is that it significantly enhances reading comprehension, vocabulary, and spelling. That's what the research on morphology is telling us right now.
Now, I fully get the morphology. It's the inflectional and the derivational, those two terms. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I think it depends on the student that you have. You cannot use those terms, or you can use those terms. And I think it depends on the student. And when I find that many of the students that I have in second, third, fourth, adults, middle school kids, high school kids, when I talk to them about the science and the terms of linguistics, which is essentially what these are, it's very honoring to them. And they don't feel like it's just another class where they're telling me how dumb I am because I can't spell and read. But there may be some students that it's an overload for it. So I use the concept, but maybe not the names. But I'm telling you, I have just a raft of kids that can talk to me about morphemes and inflections and derivations and things like that. And that's my style. And if it's not your style and you're not comfortable with that, you're going to modify it, aren't you?
No, it is helpful. I've never used the words, those words with a student, but I am not afraid to use bigger words with students. But it just is helpful to know how it's been effective for you, to see if I might be able to. Yeah.
Great. And I think these are the questions we all have to be asking, because truthfully, there are not that many people who have been doing structured literacy in the universe for a long time. I mean, I've been doing it forever, before it was even called structured literacy. But having a community of people in which we can discuss this stuff is really an important thing to me. So I welcome it, Deb. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And
Can I just say one other thing? With Deb? What I'm learning here now, I wish I had this past year, because I had two students with apraxia and the language processing, and they were both great at decoding, and they could read, and they didn't know anything after the questions, even your baseline comprehension, where if I could have stopped and if I had taught this, breaking this down, it would have helped them tremendously.
Mhm.
Because it really would have broken down the mean going from, and you said when we did fluency is part of speech. And that hit the nail on the head for me.
It is.
That
It is.
really, for comprehension,
Yeah.
that's where it all is,
Mhm.
you know.
But one of the things with Scarborough's rope,
Right.
that
I'm
is
putting that up this year.
for us, right? It's a
Mhm.
perfect image because it's
Perfect.
not like we have all those threads in Scarborough's rope frayed that way. We need to separate them so we can think of what we need to teach, but they
Mhm.
better integrate or we're never going to have a fluent, efficient learner who can take any material and learn on their own. I mean,
Right.
that's my goal.
I'm going to put up the Scarborough rope in my room this year.
Okay, Heather, you had a question or a comment.
Well, just from the other perspective of from a parent, my son, when I helped him a lot through school, he's now 25, but anytime when I could because he has the ability to comprehend orally, no problem. So anytime when I could give him information like this, where he then felt like he understood it well, even if he couldn't necessarily read as well as others, it gave him a self-esteem boost. So if it's not over their head, if you can teach them something that nobody else knows, it actually is a huge self-esteem boost for them as well.
It is. And I'm actually, so in my younger days, am I going to remember, what is the guy who's in charge of Chicken Soup for the Soul? He wrote all those books, Chicken Soup for da-da-da-da-da.
Is it something Campbell or something?
Yes. And so I knew him in LA. Everybody was in LA, right? And one of the things is there was this whole thing in education where we praised kids and we told them how great they were, and even if they came in dead last, we said you did great. You and that is so much crap. Excuse me. But there is academic self-esteem. And when you do something and you put effort into it, that is authentic feedback. And that's where I am. That's why I love mindsets. All of Dweck's work, it resonates with me. It's how do we talk to kids and how do we talk to ourselves and really, honor who we are inside. And so I think all of this, when we deal with kids this way, we are developing academic self-esteem. By asking questions and giving them the chance to answer it, you're doing a good deed for your students. It's really important. What time are we? We've got plenty of time. Okay. I think these discussions and things are really valuable. They're not cakewalks to me. They're really valuable. So I'm just trying to show you different ways to present this. So one of the things is you can take words that have a root word and a suffix and you can pull them apart. And you can put the plus sign in between. Or you can have the two parts and have the plus sign and make a whole word. So these are different activities that you can do, which is why this slide of Anglo-Saxon suffixes, we want to be able to give our kids words and can they tell us what's the base word, what's the suffix? And can they tell us what it means? Okay. Does anybody have questions or is this pretty obvious? Okay. No questions. Okay, Lisa, I'm watching you. Okay. So vocabulary surge comes from the 95% group and they have great stuff. They have great stuff. And so one of the exercises that I like in their book a great deal is called Uncovering the Meaning. Now, why do I like this so much? I like it because this is what I want to teach my kids to do when they're reading. I want them to see a word and say, that's got a prefix and that's got a base word. What could that prefix mean? What does this word mean when I stick these two things together? So here we have, he will not keep reading the book because he dislikes the main character. Our tastes are very different, so we disagree on which restaurant to choose. I distrust the safety of my new bike because the wheels wobble. Well, now I can say to you, what do you think dis means? And given the context of these three sentences, can anybody figure out what dis means? It's a powerful tool, isn't it? It's taking morphology, vocabulary, and comprehension strategies and combining them, isn't it? That's what we're doing with this exercise. We're saying, in the context of this sentence, can I figure out what this word means? And the words happen to be Anglo-Saxon words, not Latin or Greek or French, and we can pretty much figure it out, right? One of the things that you have to be careful of is a lot of people will say, oh, you don't know the vocabulary word? Can you find it out from the context of the sentence? And famously, that works very little of the time. Okay? Sometimes you can because the author is considerate and they'll put the definition after the multi-syllable Latin-based or Greek-based word. But if you have a word that's on tier 2 or tier 3, as Isabel Beck speaks about it, you're not going to be able to figure the meaning out from context, but you can do it with your Anglo-Saxon words. Any questions or comments about that? So this is an exercise that you can do with your kids. And there are lists and lists and lists on the internet of words that have the suffix dis or un or miss, okay? There is so much, thank goodness. And if you look at UFly, they're gonna have lists for you too. This is another vocabulary surge. That's a book that they have from the 95% group. And I really think this is an exceptionally good exercise. I love it. So they have all of these different prefix words that could be prefixes, or they could be a base word. So in the word miser, is the letters M-I-S, is that the prefix miss? Or is it part of the base word? This is part of the base word. In the word uncle, UN, is that a prefix or is it part of the word? It's part of the word. In the word distrust, is dis a prefix or is it part of the base word? It's a prefix. Isn't this cool, guys? I think it's brilliant. So, anybody have any questions about whether, oh, here, let's do union. U-N-I-O-N. Is UN a prefix or is it part of the base word? It's part of the base word. Okay, it doesn't mean un. Does everybody like this exercise as much as I do? I think it's a very cool exercise. Okay, let's see what else. Oh, oops. I want to go back one. So these are ways that you can, once you teach these prefixes, suffixes, and roots on the Anglo-Saxon level, you can work with them because you can't just say, this is what a, un, and dis mean. If they can't use it with words in sentences and in their writing, it's not much useful, not much use for them. So this is an exercise where we say, so, when I have the word wished, hopefully, is that a noun, adjective, or an adverb? And here's the big hint, if you're not sure. When you have "ly" on the end of something, it's an adverb, and it's describing wished, which is a verb, so it's an adverb. Pointless speech. Pointless. Is it an adjective? That would be number 1. Or 2, a noun. It's an adjective. Okay? endless trip. Is endless a noun or an adjective? One is a noun, two is an, okay. And now there's a really good one that we could say, if we wanted to, endless. Is that an inflectional morpheme or is it derivational? And it's derivational, isn't it? Because we took the word end, which is a noun, and we made it into an adjective. Okay? If we have pointless speech, point is a noun, but pointless is an adjective. So that became a derivational suffix, didn't it? Faithful, is that an adjective or is it an adverb? It is an adjective. And is it an inflectional or a derivational suffix? It's a derivational. And this is from Mega Words 2. And I own all of the Mega Words books, okay? Because you can get them for pennies on the dollar used on Amazon and stuff. And they have lots and lots of good multi-syllable stuff with them, okay? My sense, and see if you guys agree with it, I have so many kids that have no idea what the parts of speech mean. And I'm going to kind of riff on Deb's question. Why should they know parts of speech or not, right? Why? Why am I doing this? Well, it helps, remember when we were doing fluency? What words go together in a phrase? And that helps with reading them, but it also helps immensely with comprehension. Because when you get into complex sentences on the 4th, 5th, 6th, and above level, if your kids don't understand which words go together and why, they are not understanding and they are not writing complex sentences, right? So that's one reason that we want to teach parts of speech. It's like, here we go in the rope again. All of it is intertwined.
Yep, I always use it for writing too. I'll say, oh, that sentence doesn't have an adjective.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. At this, I mean, I don't think there's any level that we teach at that we're not, I mean, structured literacy is not just decoding, it's comprehension, it's vocabulary, it's writing, it's fluency. We have to do it all. We can't do one part and think we're doing our job. Now, when we are working like Deb and I do, or Laura does, on a one-to-one basis, and we're trying to fill the Swiss cheese of kids, because that's what I think of it. I have Swiss cheese kids. They know some of the things and they have big holes in other places. I want to know what their holes are so I can fill those holes so I can get to this holistic approach.
But are you surprised that people don't, that the kids don't have holes? Like, you shouldn't be surprised.
No, I'm not surprised. I'm not.
You know, I mean, our job is so big now, and I show people this is what I have to teach your child. And you know, if they're even missing what 10 days, they say that brings them down a level or whatever. And like, it's just,
it's amazing. It's amazing what we have to do.
It is. Yeah.
And my thing is, there are some kids and that I have to focus on breaking the code with. And there's some kids who I have to focus on making meaning with. And there's some kids that I have to do everything with.
All of it. Yeah. Well, if a child is ADHD or, you know, like I said, missing days, I don't know.
Yeah. I got
it's supposed to be a spiral, right?
And anymore, because I want my kids to really be conscious of what they're doing, I have to do the whole rope. I have to do the whole rope. I don't see any other way around it. And I think actually classroom teachers are luckier than the people who do what I do, which is 1-2 hours a week, because you have more time with your kids. And the only reason I can work with kids 1 hour a week is I have parents who will do the homework that I assign them with their kids. And they will practice 2 and 3 other days a week, and then we can move forward. But without that, I can't do it. Let's see what our next slide has to offer. Oh, so this is Mel Ramsden's stuff, right? And there are other people who are doing wonderful things with this also. So you take a base word and you say, how many different words can I construct using these prefixes and these suffixes? I did this last week with my high school girl, Sarah, and I have permission to say her name, Sarah. And she came up with one base word and prefixes and suffixes, 30 words. Do you think she was jazzed? She thought it was the best thing in the world. And it just expands her vocabulary enormously quickly. So this is another activity. And Mel Ramsden calls these word sums or flow, that you take one word and you're adding prefixes and you're adding suffixes and you're saying, how are these words the same in meaning? And how would I use it in a sentence? And what part of speech is it? You're not just adding prefixes and suffixes. You are milking this for all you can get.
So if I could say something about that also, I on Mondays I'm especially tired in this class because I have already taken an hour and a half class with Pete Bowers. Not a class, but he has drop-in sessions from 5 to about 6:30 every Monday. So they're free. So if any of you want to join, I can let you know how to join. But it's just a Zoom link, and I've been using these ideas with different students, and it really changes. Like if I say a word, I want her to spell a word, a student, then she'll say, well, is that the base word? Or, if I'm thinking of a word mist, and she'll say, well, could you use it in a sentence? So she'll ask me. So she really is grasping what's the meaning, what's the base word. So it's just so effective, so helpful.
Deb, I would pant to have that connection. And I will start coming to those because
it's so great.
I would love that. I would absolutely do that because, we, just like you guys, I would consider myself not an expert in this, but kind of a medium person. And so any and all ideas of how to play with this, I am up for. So I love this stuff. Yeah. And Pete Bowers has done a beautiful job here. There's another lady, and I'm not going to remember her name. That's
Rachel Lovelace.
No, it's another lady.
Lovejoy something.
She's more with. I've seen her at IDA, and but I would love everybody to have that link, and every once in a while to play with it.
So it's Eastern Standard Time Mondays starting at 5.
Okay, so it's in the afternoon for me.
Yeah, it's actually overlapping this class for you. Wait, is it? No, it's not. No, it can't be.
I don't think so.
It can't be. No, it can't be. I'm thinking that's at weird times. Eastern Standard, Pacific. So it's, it usually goes for about an hour and a half.
Great.
But sometimes it goes right till this class starts. So I'm like really tired when this class starts sometimes.
Cool.
But
so, and again, anybody who has resources for this, it's really good. And there are a couple, and I will look at, there are a couple of sites on Facebook now that also are giving us good stuff, good activities, good ideas with this level of morphology. And this really is just, it becomes endlessly interesting to do this stuff. Cool. Okay, let's see what else I got. So another way of doing this is just another format. Okay. So what I'm going to say is I would like to take 3 minutes, and I would like each of you to take one of these words, and I want you to add as many prefixes and as many suffixes and see how many words. Actually, let's take one word. Let's take the word box. And let's see how many words all of us can make with the word box, with these prefixes and suffixes. And ing is wonky because it should be in suffixes. And it moved. Okay, so we're gonna go one person at a time, and you get to say one word, and let's see how many words we get. Okay, and if somebody else says your word, you gotta cross it off your list, okay? This is like doing boggle, but with prefixes, suffixes, and roots. Okay, Zora, can you give me one word using box and a prefix or suffix or both?
Unboxed.
Unboxed, okay. Heather Doty, what's your word?
Boxers.
Boxers. Oh, she put 2 suffixes on it. Elizabeth, what's your word?
Boxed.
Oh, box. So she put the suffix ed on it. And when you put the suffix ed on that word, how did it change the root word?
Is it a I'm sorry, is it a straw? I don't know.
Yes, but is it happening now, or did it happen in the past?
In the past.
That's why. Okay, Catherine, what did you do? Give me a word.
Boxing.
Boxing. And when you put ing on, do you know what that did to the word box? Or shall I tell you?
You can tell me.
Okie dokie. It means that it's happening and it's continuing, an action that's continuing. He is boxing my ears. Okay, Lori Hetherington, what's one of your words?
Unbox.
Unbox. Did we have unbox? We had unbox already.
That's a good one then.
No, we had unbox.
Oh, and what was your word?
No, I said we had unboxed, like past tense.
Oh, okay. So you just took the ed, okay. And when you stuck that suffix onto it, how did it change the meaning of box?
Meant it undid something.
It's not. Okay, Heather Mason, what's your word?
I'll continue on the unbox train with unboxing.
Ooh. So we have 2 things there. The which means what?
Like the opposite of.
Exactly. And the ing means
in the process of doing.
Exactly. Isn't that cool? I am unboxing my groceries.
Yeah.
And you want your kids to be able to use it in a sentence, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Irene, what's the word?
I said reboxed.
Oh, and so when you did that, what happened to your word?
They put it in the past.
Stop it. I'm just telling.
Right?
Or rebox it. That's what I was thinking.
Rebox it means to box it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Okay, Joanne. Can't hear you.
Boxes.
Box. Okay. Oh,
Plural.
how many syllables in the word boxes?
Boxes, 2.
And why did you use ES instead of
Because it
X?
ends in X.
Exactly.
It has the S sound at the end.
I agree. Okay, Laura, what did you do?
I have unboxers. They're the people who take stuff out of the boxes.
Oh, I love it. And so
I want Reeboxers next. That's what I want.
I have to tell you though, here's where my mind went. Boxer shorts.
I was not going to go there.
Okay. Lee, what did you do?
I'm sort of stuck. I'm thinking about how I can use est, E-S-T. And
Oh,
I can't say boxest, but I'm wondering, can you say boxiest?
oh, yes, you can.
Okay.
Boxiest.
That's spelled.
It's the most boxy, isn't it?
Right, like the boxiest car I could buy sort of thing.
I agree with you. Oh, and now, how would you spell that E sound in boxiest right after the
An I.
and why isn't it a Y?
Oh gosh. Because you can't have two eyes.
And
no,
also, are the suffix that you're adding,
starts with
does it begin with a vowel or a consonant?
vowel.
That's why we changed the Y to I.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Do you see what I'm doing, guys? And how I can milk it for so many different things? And I also want you to notice, this is really an important thing. I really work on not saying, no, that's wrong. I'd rather talk about it in a different way and get my kids to realize that they can think about it differently instead of me saying, no, you're wrong. And Lee, that felt a little better than me saying, no, you're wrong, didn't it? Okay. Okay. Jackie, what's your word?
Oh, okay. I don't know if this is a word, but how about misbox? It's a bad box.
Oh. I think you could misbox something also. You could put it in the wrong box. Right?
Yeah,
So it could be a noun or it could be a verb, couldn't it? Cool. Yeah. Cool. Deb, what's your word?
I said boxers. I was going with what Laura said. She said unboxers, and I said I want reboxers. And when you said the word boxers, I have a mortifying story about boxers that I was at the beach with a friend, and we washed up at her friend's house, an outdoor shower, and I came home with his boxer shorts because they were in I was washing my suit afterwards, and I was holding up my suit, and then I was like, what is this? And I was like, I washed it in the sink, and I lifted it up. I'm like, what are these? It was mortifying.
I love it. I love it.
Away,
okay,
so
Lisa.
yeah.
Lisa, what's your word?
I think everyone said most of the words that I came up with.
Oh, okay. Do you want to try one word with blend? Make a new word.
Okay. I was saying misblend.
Misblend or blended or blends, right? Or blender, right? Okay. Kelsey, what do you got?
Did somebody say reboxing?
I don't know if anybody said reboxing. So what does the re mean?
Again.
And the ing. What does the ing mean? You got the right hand up. It's continual action. Not past, continuing. Okay. Okay, let's look and see what else I have up my sleeve on these. Okay, so here's just what I'm trying to give you is as many ways to mess around with Anglo-Saxon prefixes, suffixes, and roots as possible. This is how I think about my own lesson plans too. So it says, okay, now we added a base word and a suffix or prefix. Now can I separate them? I'm going to say, I want a very brave soul, and it's probably going to be Laura or it's going to be Deb to do this with me. So I'll do one with Laura. Laura, my word is smuggest. It's on the second line, first word. And if you were going to divide or separate that word into the base word plus the suffix, what would your base word be?
Smug.
I agree. What's your suffix?
Est.
EST. Why are there two G's there?
Because the second G is protecting the U from that vowel.
And
The
what
E.
rule is that? What rule is that?
The doubling
The
rule?
doubling rule. The doubling rule. Okay. It's the same thing. Wetter. Deb, wetter.
The
What's
base word is
word?
W-E-T.
And what's the suffix?
E-R.
What does ER mean as a suffix in that word?
Comparing two things.
It means it's a comparative. It's more wet, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things, and this is a really important thing to note, ER, it means different things on different words. It can be this comparative, wetter, more wet, or it can be someone who wets. And probably it's a comparative in this word. So if I have baker, the ER in baker tells me it's a person who bakes. And if I have propeller, it is a machine which propels. And if I have foggier, it means more foggy. Do you see why it's really important? Not only can I divide these words into base words and suffixes, but what does it mean when I put these words together? And that's what so many of our kids just don't have a clue about, right? They just don't have a clue about. Okay, any questions with this page and how to use it? So one of the things I'm going to want you to do is play with this yourself, but see if you can do this with your husband or your children or your next door neighbor, okay? Because you've got to practice this stuff. Oh, and I'm going to tell you something. Everybody who is doing this course with me, when we finish, we are going to be locking the YouTube channel, but you will not be locked out, okay? Because I want you to be able to go back and say, oh, I'm doing base words and suffixes today. Didn't we all talk about them? What are some activities I could use? Okay. Okay. Let's see if I have any. Okay. And I think I want to look at one thing. Yes. We only have 2 more slides, guys. I never know how long something is going to take until we do it, really. Okay. So next week we're going to do Latin. Okay. So things to do. This is a checklist. You can use etomonline.org. I love etomonline.org. You can learn about the history of words and where they came from and what the parts mean. And the man who created this, and I don't remember his name, but I saw him at one of those seminars.
Pete Bowers?
The guy who does Etom Online is a friend of Pete Bowers.
Is it Doug something?
I think it is, something like that. Anyway, it is a fabulous site. It is fabulous. So use it. Another thing is learnersdictionary.com. And the reason I like to use learnersdictionary.com is you can understand the definitions. Many, many times our students will look a word up because they don't know it and they don't understand the definition in the book, right? In the dictionary. Learnersdictionary.com, they will, okay? You want to have your students read words. Sometimes I'll make a list of 10 words, and on Monday they read those words, and on Wednesday they spell those words. I use the same words. Spelling is harder than reading, so I have them read it first. I want them to read words, individual words, and spell individual words, but I want them to do phrases and I want them to do sentences. We're into the rope again, aren't we? Scarborough's rope. I really, really, really believe in playing games with my kids. I think for those kids who have attention difficulties and anxiety, which is all of our kids right now, if I do games, I can get so much more work out of those kids, right? So games, we should be sharing games all year. I put as many of games in my book as I could. We want to do phonemic awareness with everything, everything. So you could, just as you add a sound in a one syllable word, you can add a prefix. You can omit a prefix. You can shift sounds in the middle syllable. So you can do phonemic awareness on the multi-syllable level also. You want to do fluency activities with your kids. You want to talk about vocabulary, synonyms, antonyms, shades of meaning in the words that you're exploring. You want to use correct and incorrect usage. There is some materials, it's called Word Feast. Anybody else know Word Feast? I love it. Word Feast was done by some, I believe, speech and language people who took Isabel Beck's work and made lessons out of it. It's really helpful. Word Feast. And in that, one of the things they talk about all the time is how do I use this word correctly? And when is it incorrectly used? Very useful. We always want our kids to be able to give us examples and non-examples. And we want them to give us personal definitions, which is, again, Word Feast and Isabel Beck's work. Isabel Beck really gave us a lot of good stuff in vocabulary. Really good stuff. My parting word is, for today, that you got to start this stuff in kindergarten and first grade and second grade. And you have to do it with your students who are in older grades who haven't been taught this information explicitly. Does anybody have anything they have to add, questions before we say goodnight?
That thing about shyly and, you know, why doesn't it change to an I? I have a really great book. I think I got it like at a tag sale or something, like a homeschooling thing. It's called Uncovering the Logic of English. So it was bothering me. So I went and looked it up.
And does it have an answer in that book?
It says this, and it is an exception along with, I think there's only, of the thousands of words ending in Y, these words, the exceptions represent less than 1%. Let me see, dryness, flyable, shyer, shyly, shyness, slyness, slyer. So, and there are also some words that you can spell both ways. Dryer, D-R-I-E-R, D-R-Y-E-R. So I find this book really helpful because it's just easy to read. See, like it's just, you know, this is just.
Of course, Deb, I own that book.
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you for that. Thank you.